Hello, friends. Welcome to the LeggLife podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherry.
Sherry Beth, what episode is this?
129.
It is. Now, I want to address something. We have been doing, well, I take that back. We had been doing so good on the podcast.
Yeah.
But we have missed 3 of the last 4 weeks.
Oops.
Gosh darn it, we are committed to getting back on track.
We actually meant to do this one last week, and we were just like,
We were just like so tired. It was one of those things where it's like we could have done it last minute, but it just didn't. It felt too rushed. It didn't feel real.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's just put it off a week and do it a week later.
Yeah.
So here we are.
And
I do want you to know, in this week's episode, there's going to be some light spoilers for a movie that we're going to be talking about. But here's the thing: it's an animated movie. It's not one of those like life-changing. Well, it kind of is a little bit life-changing. It's a movie that I think it's okay if there's some spoilers.
I think so too, and I think, like you said, we'll get into what this movie is, but it's been out for a little bit.
So, it's okay.
And I feel like the people that really want to go see it have already seen it. So.
And I feel like we all already know what the movie's about.
I mean, yeah, you can tell, you can pretty much, just from the trailer, like, get the entire...
It's like, okay, I get it.
...plot of the movie. So.
Sherry Beth, what movie is it?
Inside Out 2.
So, you guys, we went and saw it last... was it last Friday night?
Last Friday night, yeah. Which I think was also partly why we just needed a week to kind of, like, marinate.
Process a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We got out of the movie, and we both said to each other, we need to do a podcast on this. So, let's back it up a little bit.
Yeah.
We love the original Inside Out.
Correct.
We actually... dressed up. That was a group costume with some friends of ours for Halloween years ago.
One of my very favorite years.
You were.
Sadness.
I was Anger. And
I feel like the sadness suited me. The anger did not so much suit you.
I had fun playing the role of Anger.
It was a lot of fun watching you, but it's so different from who you are.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Because I felt like I was getting to act as something that I just don't know a ton about. Because I'm really not an angry guy.
Right. I am very in tune with my sadness.
Sadness fits you. So we love this movie. Love this movie. And the sequel came out. We wanted to see it. And so last week we were like, you know what? Gosh darn it. We're going on a date. Adam's going to get to eat a whole bunch of popcorn. All will be right in the world.
I got some Sour Patch Kids that I'm still snacking on.
You are. You've not even finished your movie Sour Patch Kids. My popcorn long gone.
Oh, well, I would hope so. Yeah.
I think maybe by the time the movie started, I am definitely one of those people that is like, if I can get through my popcorn during the previews, you better believe I'm gonna.
And here's the thing. I actually appreciate that about you. This is totally off topic, but I appreciate that about you because it drives me crazy when there's like chomping and rustling during the movie.
Oh, I agree.
Ugh.
So I speed through my popcorn. So we see this movie, and we knew from the trailers, and we knew from even the original, that it's like, oh, this is a movie that's going to tug on the old heartstrings.
Oh, I still can't watch the original without crying, and I think I can quote most of it.
But to me, Inside Out 2 was different. So basically, here's the premise, and this is just what you'd get from watching the trailer. Riley grows up.
She's a preteen / teenager.
And as that happens with all of us, there are new emotions that get into the mix as you get older, especially as you're going through that time of life.
Yeah.
And those emotions can take over and can bring a little bit of crazy.
Correct.
To put it mildly.
Right. So I'm going to give, for those of you who maybe have not seen either movie.
I love it. Do it.
I'm going to give just a little bit of background on what those emotions are. Okay. So in the original Inside Out, there is joy, there is sadness, anger, disgust, and fear.
And a bing bong.
And
all right, bing bong.
You had to bring bing bong.
I know, I'm sorry.
Dang it.
Actually, no, go ahead. I'll touch on, I'm going to write down on my notebook, I'm just going to write bing bong.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay.
And I'm going to talk about something from the second movie a little bit later, but keep going.
Okay. So then the new emotions that are introduced once Riley hits puberty, which is really, I loved the way that they did this in the movie. It was literally like a button, like it was press the button and here they go. Like it was like one night she was fine, the next morning she was crazy, and I was like, oh yeah, yep, that tracks.
Felt relatable.
So the new emotions that are introduced are anxiety and envy and embarrassment and ennui, and was it just those 4?
and nostalgia.
Oh, nostalgia.
Here, can I touch into this real quick?
Yeah.
This is where I felt like they had a chance.
Oh, to bring back Bing Bong
To bring
a
back
little bit.
Bing Boing. Bing Boing. Hey, my name's Bing Boing. Oh, my Lord. Bing Bong with nostalgia.
Oh, no. I would have cried even harder.
Can you imagine?
Goodness gracious.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go watch
Go
Inside
watch
Out, the
first
original.
one, and then just follow it immediately by the second. It needs to happen. I feel like these are movies that everybody needs in their life.
I agree. Kids or adults.
Kids and adults. I feel like it was very important for kids to be able to see what emotions are and how they affect you and consequences of acting on emotions. But as an adult, I think it is so important to be able to like tune into your emotions and know what they are, be able to name them, and be able to fully appreciate them.
I felt like Inside Out 2 was a kid's movie that really was made for adults.
I agree.
Like it's an animated movie, so the audience, you assume that kids are the target audience. But,
and there were obviously kids in the theater with us.
But I got to tell you, that movie, there was one scene that we both just like, instant tears.
Oh, man.
And just like, it's like, oh, that hit me. Like, Disney, why you got to do that to us?
Like, it's straight, just a throat punch to the heart. Like, it was just, oh my goodness gracious.
And there were a lot of those. There were just quotes and lines and visuals that as an adult just felt so real. Relatable. And so what we want to talk about was not even just the movie. This isn't like a movie review podcast. It was those things, those parts of the movie that to us felt real.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start it off by saying this. I wish this was a movie series that was made when I was a kid. I wish that I would have grown up with that messaging, because I have been told so many times in my life, not ever by my parents, not ever by like people who love me, but that I'm too emotional.
I think especially for a guy.
I'm a guy. I have no problem crying. I think that's super healthy. I have no problem showing my emotions. I have no problem, you know what I mean? Like and so I've heard like, oh, you're too emotional. And what I hear in that, and I think the messaging, well, I've got a couple things to say. First of all, I think when people say you're too emotional, what they're really saying is I'm uncomfortable with your emotions.
Correct.
Like I don't
100%.
I don't know what to do with this. Right? That is what they're saying.
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
oh, sorry, my emotions made you uncomfortable.
Maybe you should tap into your own.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like that statement actually says more about the person saying it than you.
Yeah.
But to me, they're just, I was very fortunate to have a mom who always cultivated the fact that emotions were positive and were good and to feel all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But I lived in a world that didn't, especially as a guy, especially as a bigger guy who played sports. And like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I wish...
Man up.
That's exactly it. Man up. I wish I would have grown up in a world as a kid where messaging like this existed. Yeah. That, hey, these emotions aren't bad. They just are. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think you probably got it more because as a guy, it's almost like it's not manly or whatever to show emotion of any kind, which is
that's something women do.
Utter bullshit.
That's a feminine trait, is
right,
what people
to
would
have
say.
Emotion.
Exactly.
Which is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Oh, hi, Missy girl.
Missy, did you guys know Missy just walked in? She's kind of sitting by us.
I think that everybody is on a spectrum of emotion. I think that there are people who just don't show emotion, and that is their personality. And it doesn't mean that they don't have them. It just means that they don't show them.
Such a good way to put it.
I think everybody has emotion, and some people just suppress it, or some people just don't show it. I am not either of those people. Mm-hmm. I cannot not show my emotion. Yeah. Especially when it comes to tears. I have cried twice today. It takes very, very little for me to cry. And I think part of that is that I feel my own emotions very strongly. I feel other people's emotions very strongly.
You're very much an empath. You feel the energy and the aura and the emotion and the weight that other people are carrying.
Right, which and I said this in a meeting with you
Just a couple nights ago.
and it's something that has just recently occurred to me. That's why I don't like crowds. It's because crowds are overstimulating for me, and I never really could like put a finger on why. I think it's because I'm feeling all of the emotion of everybody in that space.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's too much for me.
Yep.
Like I can't not.
And even for you, you talked about like crying. To you, crying is not associated with just sadness.
No.
Like tears are associated with multiple emotions for you.
Every emotion that is not, again, I think emotions are on a spectrum. I think that, you can feel a little bit of anger and you can feel a whole lot of anger. You can feel a little bit of envy and a whole lot of envy. I think that every emotion has a spectrum. If I am in like that maybe 4 to 6 on the spectrum, like 1 to 10, I'm probably okay.
Yeah.
If I am that 1 to 3 or that 7 to 10, I'm crying. Like it doesn't matter what the emotion is. If it's a happy emotion, if it's a sad emotion,
Yeah,
it doesn't
joy,
matter.
sadness, anxiety, fear. Like it doesn't matter.
It
Tears with all of them.
Matter.
Yeah.
Tears come with all of them for me. And I also so I can feel the emotions of everybody around me, but I can also immediately connect with the emotion of characters in books, in movies, in commercials. It takes me a 15-second commercial to connect with that person and cry.
Do you think it's one of the reasons that you like books so much?
I think so, because I can feel, and I also feel like that is part of my star system. This is getting a little bit off track.
Okay,
But
do
it's
it.
part of how I rate books. If the book really made me connect to the character enough that I could feel what they're feeling, it's going to get a higher rating for me.
That makes sense.
It doesn't really matter. Like, if it's poorly written, if it's got bad grammar that you could have fixed in like Microsoft Word, I'm going to knock a star or 2 off. But I also, like, if I can actually connect with the character, I can overlook some of those grammatical things too.
So the emotions you feel, you tend to feel the full spectrum of emotions.
At all times.
At all times. That's right. And so
Yes.
I think for me, we talked about this a little before. Let me ask you this question. Of the emotions, and let's just stick to the original 5 in Inside Out.
Okay.
Actually, no, let's do Inside Out and the new ones.
Yeah.
Of the emotions that are present in the movies, what are the ones that you feel like? So in the movie, in case you haven't seen it, there's kind of this control board in Riley's brain that controls her actions, her thoughts, all of that. And so imagine, and it's actually been helpful for me, picture that as if that's happening in your own brain. Sherry, which of those emotions is at the control board controlling things most often for you?
Most often. I think that I have to use a new one. Anxiety. I think that anxiety probably controls me the most. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Talk about that.
So in the movie, I mean, okay, so honestly, me going into the movie knowing that anxiety was going to be one of these new emotions, because they talk about that in the trailer.
Yep.
I already kind of knew that this was going to hit me hard because I know that anxiety controls me a lot. However, the way that the movie explained anxiety, it's not just this chaotic, elevated fear kind of thing. It's looking ahead. It's figuring out all of the different scenarios and outcomes of these scenarios,
Right.
And then planning accordingly. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have this anxiety. I think that's a big part of my own personality too. Like, I see all sides, I see all outcomes, and I try to steer myself, or you and me, like, toward what I think is going to be the best outcome.
And so that forward-lookingness of anxiety, that's the positive
That's
to
a
anxiety.
good. That's a good part of anxiety.
Absolutely.
Now, also talked about in the movie, when anxiety takes full control and is now seeing all of these scenarios and spiraling, literally a spiral around this console.
Oh my gosh, the way that the movie, like the way it depicted it, was so just relatable.
It was, I mean, visually, I was just like, yes, like that is what happens in my brain when I allow the chaotic side of anxiety to take full control. And yeah, so I for me, I think that anxiety is the controller of my console. But again, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that it can be, and I think that it has been, but I don't think it has to be.
So I'm going to get to mine in a second, but before I get to mine, I'm going to kind of expand on that a little bit, because I actually think and I think that this was one of the most important messages of the movie that I took away, when any one emotion is the one that takes over and takes control and is so dominant, that is a negative.
Right.
So even in the movie, Joy, who's kind of the main character, I think you could say, when Joy takes over, it shows the negative things that happen when Joy is always in control.
Right, because she wants to basically bury all of the negatives.
But the problem is that all the negatives still happened.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. So my I would say dominant is Joy. But the danger of Joy, you talked about like the positive and the negative of anxiety. The negative of Joy is that you almost want to put on blinders to some of the hard realities. This is where you get that like toxic positivity. Whereas when Joy is healthy, it is actually in balance with the other emotions.
Right.
And that was the big takeaway of the movie for me, was how it's not this ranking of like, oh, these are the good emotions, those are the bad emotions. What is important is that we are feeling all of the emotions in balance.
Right. And the way that they had to break the spiral of anxiety was all of the emotions coming together and, I mean, basically, I don't even
embracing in some way, right?
all of them themselves as important.
Yeah.
And that is what broke the spiral of anxiety.
And I think that to me is the best message of that movie, because
Yeah.
One of the dangers that I was a little concerned about was this hierarchy of emotions, that maybe that would be the message of this new movie, that oh, the original emotions are more important, are better, or this kind of stuff. But
Anxiety's bad and needs to be shut down.
exactly. But there is positive anxiety. There's positive to sadness. I was talking about this with my mom, and we might have talked about this in a podcast. I think last year when she was going through cancer stuff, we had a message, and she was telling me, don't be sad for me. Like when I pass on, I am finally free of all of this. This isn't the end for me. Don't be sad. But for me, sadness ascribes value to something. Right? We are sad when we lose something that mattered to us. Not just someone, but something.
Right.
If you lose something and you're not sad, it probably didn't matter that much.
Right.
And so the positive of even sadness is that it's like, oh, that was something that really mattered. Right? There's something that was of value there.
The book I just finished today, which was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston.
Shocked.
Talks about grief and how there is no grief without love.
That's exactly it. We feel that emotion because we lost something that mattered.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so I think to me that was my takeaway from this whole beautiful movie that was funny and that was just like so heartwarming, was that challenge even to myself. Hey, are my emotions balanced? And when they're out of balance, what do I do to get them back?
Right. And are you allowing yourself to feel all of your emotions?
Or have you been told that some of these are bad? Like, oh, you know what? Like you're too sad. You're too whatever. Like you're too, again, it goes back to that, all the messages that I received, too emotional.
Right.
It's like, oh, you feel too much. I think that's a beautiful thing.
I think that's a good thing. Even anger. I think that there is absolutely a place for anger. Now, I think that as with any emotion, I don't think that you can control what emotion you are feeling. I don't think that that's actually a thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think that you can control how you react to that emotion.
Your response.
That you're feeling.
Yeah.
So when it comes to anger, I don't think that anger itself is a bad thing. I think that means that you care. I think that it means that you care about something. Now, if you, like, anger is different from rage.
100%.
And if you're raging, you might want to get that checked out. You might want to figure out what it is that you're raging about and why. And again, feel that emotion. Allow that emotion to be felt and figure out where it's coming from and why, and deal with it that way. I don't think that when you're acting rageful, that's a good thing.
Well, and I think that we do that with all the emotions.
Right.
I think that sometimes we use that as an excuse. Oh, I'm just a passionate person. No, you're just an asshole.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or it's like, oh, I'm just really sad. Actually, maybe you're depressed.
Right.
You
There's
know,
a
like,
medication for that can really actually help you out.
100%.
Right.
And so I think that sometimes we use that as an excuse because what we do is that if I say, oh, I'm just always happy all the time, actually you're not being real. You're probably going to toxic positivity. And what you need is you actually need to feel all the other emotions.
Allow yourself to sit in your sadness and
Well, you need, like, just like you described the way that movie, when anxiety was going crazy, what you need is you need all of those other emotions to come around that thing that is dominant and balance it out. And so if you're like, oh, I'm just angry a lot because I'm really passionate. Well, then what you need is all those other emotions to come around and regulate that, because that's actually not healthy.
Right. It was also interesting to me in the movie. So joy is kind of the dominant emotion for Riley. But when they go into, like, her parents and into her friends, there's different emotions that are driving those.
And that's so real.
And I love that. It's so real. And I remember feeling that at the end of the first one, when they kind of went into the parents' brain consoles for a minute. Sadness was in control of her mother, and anger was in control of her father.
It wasn't the same for everybody.
And I loved that.
Me too.
And then when they went into her friends, I don't remember what was what, but I do feel like they had different emotions kind of driving them. And and again, it's not that, sadness is always in charge in the mother. I think that varies, but I also think that knowing who your person is and kind of what is probably the emotion that's driving the most is important, because you know how to detect when anxiety is really, like, the chaotic side of anxiety is taking over, and you can help me not spiral.
Oh, okay. You're saying your person, you're saying like us.
Like us. Like you as my person.
When you were saying my person, I thought you were talking like as if you were an emotion and like the person you're controlling.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Like, so you knowing that anxiety is kind of the dominant force of my brain console.
Yeah.
And me knowing that joy is a dominant force of yours. I know how to relate to you, and you know how to relate to me. And I also know when you are trying to be falsely joyful.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's more than just your person.
When you're just trying to, like, bury... I think it's, all of your friends, all of your, like...
Yeah,
I think that it's important to know people around you.
I think every person who's around you has a dominant or has a driving, or maybe they're in a season where it's, like, really healthy and they have a really good balance of that. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's really important to know, because we are all being driven by certain emotions.
Right. And again, it varies and it changes. And it changes for me, too. But I would say, like, most of the time, the majority of the time.
Is sadness?
So, anxiety.
Oh, that's what I meant. Sorry, anxiety. Yeah, I think that's...
I'm very in tune with my sadness, though, as well.
I think that's... I would say anxiety and sadness. So, okay, let me ask you a question then. Mm-hmm. For you, as somebody who... Because I think that you and we have, fortunately, a lot of conversations, even long before this movie, most of our marriage, about topics like this.
Yeah.
Our household is one where big feelings are welcome, appreciated. Like,
encouraged.
Because what's the alternative? That you just bury that stuff down and become numb, and we all become this, like...
Robot society.
If, like, for guys, are all just, like, stoic, emotionless machines.
Alpha holes.
I've never heard that term before.
It's because I read.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I don't know where I was going. I was on a track.
I think it's important. We were talking about us talking about emotion in our house.
That was going to be my question. Thank you. For you, who's somebody who you can look at yourself and say, these are my two predominant emotions. What are things that you do or have done, or maybe like just wish you did more to keep those from going to the really negative effects of anxiety and sadness? Like what are the ways you try to bring balance to that?
My media intake, I think, like the last few years, we've been very open with this, have been very difficult for us, emotionally. And there's been a lot of outside forces causing all of these emotions. And so I tend to seek out, like I haven't been able to really read a lot of my darker, like dystopian books, because I'm already in a sad, anxious state. And so reading these books about dystopian, sad, anxious societies just is going to drag me down farther. So my books, my movies, that kind of stuff that I've been watching have been happier because I know that I need that balance in my life.
Interesting. That makes sense.
When I'm in a happier place in my life, where there's not so many things being thrown at me, I love those darker dystopian kind of books. But I can't handle them right now.
One of my favorite things is I feel like every illustration you give about anything,
It goes back to books.
It always goes back to books.
It's shocking, I know.
But
it's the same with movies and TV shows and stuff too. Like there's TV shows that I want to watch, but I know are darker, and I'm not in a place where I can handle that, and I know that about myself.
That makes sense. And even hearing you say that makes me wonder. I feel like now this is a little bit different because I feel like I've always, even my mom talking about me when I was a kid, I feel like I've always been joyful. But I was going to say, I think one of the things that actually regulates me is the fact that work-wise, I'm in such a dark place.
Yeah.
You know, that it's almost like the joy is what pulls me out of the hell that I live in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's almost like it's a good balance between the kind of work that I do and the kind of personality I have, because those almost regulate themselves. And I've never thought about it like that before.
Right. And there's a reason that I can't step in side by side with you.
Because it's too dark.
Because
and you
I already live in that dark place.
It's very interesting. I've never thought about that. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So basically, what we're trying to say is go see Inside Out 2.
And if you haven't seen the first one, watch that first.
I would say it is an animated movie. It's a kid's movie. And I know some people are like, nah, I'm not into that. Watch it and look for the deeper meanings, because these are movies, two more than the first one, at least to me, where it's like, oh gosh, that, like I said earlier, it's a movie that looks like it was made for kids, but the theme and the message feels like it was crafted for adults.
And again, I think that's because Riley hits puberty, and so she's getting these adult emotions. Adult emotions.
I'm curious to see if they continue making these movies, because here's the reality.
You can add in so many more.
It's one of the things that I told Sherry, was imagine an Inside Out where Riley loses one of her parents and all of a sudden grief comes in. Like, to me, these movies...
First actual heartbreak.
That's right. To me, these movies have already done a lot to validate and normalize the importance of emotions. And they actually could continue doing that for several more movies, because as you grow older, as you learn to feel more, you do have all of these additional... heartbreak is such a good one. Grief is such a good one. Oh, my gosh.
There's these bigger emotions that, most kids just don't experience because they're kids and your brain can't function. I think that, and I think that's where trauma comes in, when there's these emotions that are occurring in kids that are too young to know what to do with it.
And what a healthy teaching tool to be able to use for kids that are growing up about how they're feeling.
Yeah. Right?
Like, because kids are being introduced to, they're being given a language for ways that they feel inside. And I love that. I just think it's such a great, 2 thumbs up. My gosh, we loved these movies.
I love these movies. Yeah. and I will watch them over and over, and I will cry every damn time.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think that really was kind of the challenge that we both had coming out of the movie was just asking the question, like, number one, the importance of all emotions,
Right.
in balance, in cooperation with each other, that they're all present and they're all active and they're all doing what they're supposed to do in a positive way. That when any one of them takes over, it's bad news bears.
Right. I think that, I mean, because we touched on this, but we didn't actually say what these lines were, that there were a couple of lines that we were both just like, oh.
Yep.
There was a part in the movie, and again, this is a little bit spoilery, but
it's a cartoon. You're fine.
I mean, you're going to be okay. Where Joy breaks down and starts crying, and she says, I don't know how to stop anxiety.
That was the moment for me.
And I had been crying before that, but I think that watching Joy, who is literal joy, the emotion joy, she's always happy, she's always positive, she's always upbeat, to have her literally like sink down and start crying and just be like, I don't know how to stop anxiety.
Isn't that a feeling? Here's what I'll say. I can't speak for everybody listening. That is a thought I have had.
Yeah.
I don't know how to stop anxiety.
I don't know how to stop this. And what was the other one that we
I've got it in my head. This other emotion, this other line was basically
also spoken by Joy.
But Joy kind of realizing that, I've run the show, and now there's all these other emotions, and I'm not so much the main character. And basically she says, maybe growing up means less joy. Whoa, oh my gosh.
I mean, you're not wrong, but damn it.
Did you have to say it?
We didn't have to say those words out loud.
Come on, Disney. But it was just...
it's so true. I mean... And I think that, I had a happy childhood, and like looking back, having all of the emotions that I have now and knowing how to pinpoint what these emotions are. If I had all of these words and all of these emotions in my childhood, I don't know that I would have said it was a happy childhood, but it was a happy childhood. Like, I had a good childhood.
Yep.
And I think that there's things that, as you grow up, there are things that are maybe a little bit less because you grow up.
And I'm so thankful. I think the thing I'm most grateful for about this movie is there's a lot of kids that grow up in homes where emotions are not talked about, or if, again, you're too emotional, you feel too much, the emotions are too big. I just love that the message of this movie is that, whatever emotion you're feeling, like, it's okay to say things like that. That you hear Joy say, like, maybe growing up means there's less joy, or I don't know how to control anxiety, or I'm feeling a lot of sadness right now, or you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to talk about the big emotions and feelings. That is not what most people get to experience at home as a kid growing up.
And not only is it okay to experience and feel all of these emotions, but you have to have all of these emotions in order to be a balanced human.
Yeah, that's what it means to be human, I think.
Like, if there's one emotion that's driving you and that's it, you're not a balanced human. You're probably a psychopath.
Yeah, we were made to feel, and we were made to feel it all.
Right.
Oh my God, what a good movie.
Yeah.
So you guys, here's what I want to know. Have you seen Inside Out 2? First of all, that's what I want to know. Have you seen Inside Out 2? And if you have, think of all the emotions from the original movie and the second one. Mm-hmm. What is the one that is most often controlling you?
Yeah.
I want to know that. What's the one? Is there one that when you look at it, it's like, that's the one that's got me?
Keeping in mind that none of them are bad.
Absolutely.
They're all necessary emotions.
100%. That's the thing, is that it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like, it is completely flat.
Right. I don't love the anxiety is the one that drives me. But again, I think that there's good parts of that because I can look to the future in a way that Adam can't.
That's exactly right. And for me, like, that, I love that I'm a joyful person, especially in the work that I do. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I can go into that that toxic positivity thing and almost want to put on blinders to, again, this is why one of my big takeaways from this podcast is like, oh crap, I'm so thankful for the balance I have between my work, because my work doesn't let me like live in a place where bad things don't happen.
Right.
You know?
Right. You're surrounded by bad things happening.
And so like my personality helps that. But at the same time, I for sure can go to the negative side of that.
Yeah.
Without question. So
Toxic positivity.
Where you just always good, always happy. It's like, that's not real.
Right.
So
Yep.
There you go.
Here we go. So how do you want to tell them how we...
I want you to tell them.
Okay. So you have your assignment, your homework.
Yep.
We want to know what emotion drives you.
What's your controlling emotion?
Yep. And if you have seen Inside Out 2, and if you have not, when are you going to go see it?
Exactly.
Okay. So the way that you do that is you go to YouTube.
Yep.
And you look up the LeggLife podcast.
Yep. Search LeggLife podcast in the search bar.
And you find this podcast.
Yep.
About emotions.
You do.
And then you leave a comment.
And,
however, before you leave that comment,
okay, I'm curious to see if you're going to hit it.
We want you to hit subscribe.
Because, do you know why, Sherry? I checked before we started recording this podcast. 899 subscribers.
Ooh.
On the LeggLife podcast. And here's what I want to ask you guys to do. Even if you are listening to this on Spotify, on Apple, on one of the podcast platforms that is not YouTube, would you go to YouTube and would you subscribe? It would help us a ton if we can continue to grow the subscribers on YouTube again, even if you don't watch on YouTube.
Right. That number, unfortunately, is important to YouTube. So
it is.
Yep. Go subscribe. Hit that little bell icon so you know when we have posted a new one.
Gives you a little notification when a new episode is up, and hopefully missing episodes is a thing of the past. That's our hope.
We're gonna try to be better. We were doing really good, and then life happens.
A little bit of bump in the road.
It's all right.
But we are gonna get back to it because we really do love doing this.
Yeah.
Podcast is one of our very, very favorite things we get to sit down and record.
Agreed.
Because we get to talk about things like this.
And we've said this 100 times in 129 podcasts that these are the conversations we have anyway. We talk about this anyway, and so this is just kind of us hitting record, and then you can listen in on our conversation and hopefully engage with us by leaving those comments.
Yeah, for the most part, what you guys just heard is an expanded version of exactly what happened in our vehicle when we walked out of the movie theater.
Right.
Like, we closed the door, and what we should have done...
We were both like, we have to do a podcast.
What we should have done is just pulled out the phone and just said, all right, we're going to record it right here.
Right. Live, we're just going to live process because there was a lot of processing. But
it was really good over the last week to get to think about some of the stuff and even just reflect on it. So friends, we love you guys so much. Thanks for listening to our Inside Out 2 Emotion Feeling podcast.
Yeah.
Love you, friends. We'll see you on the next LeggLife podcast. Bye.